welcome on Primetime Watchmaking in the News. And before we start with the industry news and tell you about the new releases and technical achievements, and there's a lot to be said in this edition, so yes, please hang in there, take it nice and easy, relax. And let me quickly remind you that we've recently published a very cool report from the racetrack where we explained the pitboard function of the Twin Turbo Furious by Jacob & Co. This is a highly complex timepiece, and in a certain way, well, this rather smart feature of this watch gets a little bit unnoticed, but it's nonetheless really clever. But, and very importantly, I would like to share with you a fantastic news as the Horopedia Foundation finally officially exists as of the 1st of February. This is a project which is so dear to me, and it simply fills me with joy that we will now be able to move on with it. The website is already live, okay, still at an early stage, but you can already go through it and it will depict you the vast endeavor this project represents. So this formal creation took much longer than anticipated to set up, and reason why I've been pretty quiet about it, and we still have a few administrative things to undertake. But that's just the way it is, and I will get back on the matter in a dedicated video in the near future. I truly believe this is a game changer in terms of how watchmaking know-how and expertise is shared, and it's really an ambitious and purposeful project, one that will take years in the making, a real marathon, but we have many great people around it, not to mention, for instance, Philippe Dufour acting as the president of the foundation. So details to come soon, but I'm already quite happy, as you can see. So in this edition, we will come back on some business matters, plenty of new watches to talk about, including some APs as I was invited to attend their new pieces presentation event, but much more than this, so let's go. All right, let's start and give you an update on the final figures for the watch export in 2022. I know that many of us predicted numbers to exceed the 25 billion threshold, and we were not too far from reality. Last December broke the 2 billion francs bar, which had never occurred previously at this point in the year. And overall export amounted to the equivalent of 24.8 billion Swiss francs for the whole of 2022, an increase of 11.4% compared with 2021. But please bear in mind that this reflects the value of watches exported, meaning mainly sold to worldwide distributors, and retail value is far beyond this 25 billion Swiss franc mark. And at the same time, it doesn't mean that all these watches were ultimately sold to the end consumer. Yes, you always have to take these numbers with a bit of caution. And regarding 2023, well, I'm not 100% convinced that the industry will achieve such an amazing performance, despite, for instance, the fact that China and some other countries from the region are starting to recover from COVID restrictions. And I'm sure you noticed this recent trend of big brands hiring Asian pop singers as their ambassadors. And even if we're not familiar with some of them, well, they have armies of fans around the globe who are ready to buy everything they spot on the stars. But will this be enough? Well, we'll see. Other numbers worth mentioning would be the key figures from the three main luxury groups, which performed extremely well last year, and this is also thanks to the watch market. Swatch Group announced the net sales rose by almost 5% to 7.5 billion Swiss franc, with of course the Moon Swatch being a best seller of the year for them. According to official data, over 1 million watches were sold from the date when the bioceramic Speedmaster clone was first introduced to the world, but they nevertheless couldn't have catered to a wider sales network as they were not being able to produce more of them. Well, it is highly likely they will hit the crazy number of 1.5 million pieces sold in one full year by March 2023. And who knows, well, 23 may bring us other novelties as successful as Moon Swatch. And it would be interesting to know your opinion about the Moon Swatch and its performance, so don't hesitate to comment below. And well, what do you think could be another successful mariage? A 50 fathom Swatch, for instance? But what I would like to highlight is that if they didn't pull this fantastic coup, well, I'm not sure that overall figures for the Swatch Group would be so positive. 1 million pieces sold at 250 francs in their own boutiques. Well, you do the maths, but I guess you see what I mean. Another big fish in the watch pond is of course Richemont, but they were not as successful as they planned, at least in watch sales, which was 5% lower than in 2021, despite the significant growth in the European and Japan market. The best performance of A. Lange & Söhne and Vacheron Constantin did not help to overcome COVID-related disruptions and double-digit declines in China and Asia Pacific. Again, now when the COVID restrictions are lifted, we should expect a significant rebound of sales in 2023, but let's see. On the other hand, LVMH announced 2022 as the record year with revenue growth of 18% in watches and jewelry, the latter counting a lot, of course. And the best brands were Bulgari with the iconic Serpenti line and Octo Finissima Ultra, particularly in Europe, Japan, and the United States. TAG Heuer had its own strong momentum with the Carrera Plasma, and Hublot did well in parts thanks to the 2022 Football World Cup. They even announced the expansion of their infrastructure in Nyon with the addition of a new 15,000 square meter manufacture. The works are expected to start in May, June, and the new building will accumulate all the production, including making of in-house movement and cases, as the brand aims to get 80% of movements to be made on-site by 2028. There will be new workplaces as well, with the number of employees almost doubling and coming to 1,000. So we might expect a slight raise of Hublot timepieces in the near future. Let's now move to mergers and acquisition. In our last edition, we told you about Breitling and Beauvais, and it's time for the British brand Bremont to make a step further to the possible stock exchange listing. This January, it was announced that American investor Bill Ackman purchased a substantial minority interest in the company alongside prior Bremont's controlling shareholder Hellcat LP, totaling $59 million in combined investment. Ackman believes Bremont could reach the scale of Breitling, which was valued at $4.5 billion late last year, and now the brand, known for watches marketed with pilot and military inspirations, secure its value at more than $120 million. So quite far from the Breitling level yet, but there's always room for ambitions and dreams. De Bethune also announced acquisition of the majority stake in the Reuge manufacturer of mechanical music boxes, and the deal should be sealed in February, and the amount of investment is not to be disclosed. But we should remember that Watchbox, one of the world's largest retailers of pre-owned watches, has taken a majority stake in De Bethune in 2021. Apparently, financial injections to revive the fortunes of the independent Swiss watchmaker worked very well, and we have seen it in their latest timepieces. And with the new deal, there should be some interesting collaboration at some point. But it looks like Watchbox decided to take another step in its expansion on the watch market, and it would be too surprising if there could be some additional news in this direction coming this year. Well, luckily this had a positive impact on De Bethune and should help Reuge to boost its creativity as well. It is announced that each company will continue to work on their own projects separately, but Denis Flageolet and Pierre Jacques are planning to join forces to promote the best way La Mécanique d'Art Suisse with the help of Arme Al Atoischen on some strategic decisions. What can I say? Well, looking forward to seeing it, and Reuge has an amazing manufacturing facility located in the same region of Sainte-Croix. And a couple of words on the secondary watch market, which is expected to exceed the new watch market in 2023 with the help of the new trend to buy luxury items responsibly. And on that matter, Jaeger-LeCoultre recently announced the launch of the Collectibles, a new program for collectors and enthusiasts who wish to acquire a GLC piece of history, a bit like what Vacheron Constantin introduced already quite some years ago. Apparently, it was intended to celebrate the 190 years anniversary of the manufacture, but maybe there will be more surprises from them, and the capsule collection includes 12 most coveted wristwatches ranging from the 1920s to the 1970s, including Reverso small seconds, Master Mariner deep sea, and Memovoxes. All of them are the perfect illustration of the Maison's technical prowess, demanding savoir-faire and some stylistic audacity throughout the 20th century. So the collectible is complemented by an eponymous master reference book on GLC's 17 most emblematic models, and I'm sure this would be a great present for some watch aficionados. And now one sad news, we have learned that Mr. Helmut Wempe passed away on January 29th at the age of 90. He was the grandson of Gerard D. Wempe, founder of Wempe near Hamburg in 1878, and son of Herbert Wempe. It is a great loss for the watchmaking community, and Mr. Wempe was the man who brought in 1953 the brand Rolex to his shop and basically was the main player in the watches retail worldwide for quite some time. His father did the same already in 1923 when he decided to become the retailer of Lang & Söhne, and under the leadership of Mr. Helmut Wempe, almost 35 watch shops were opened in Germany and other countries of the world, including New York, Paris and Madrid. In 2005, as a remarkable gift to Germany, while Wempe bought and restored the historical astronomical observatory of Glashütte, and his daughter Kim Eva Wempe took over the legacy and has been running the Wempe business for a couple of years already, bringing the turnover of the company to over €500 million. So thank you, Mr. Wempe, for what you did for watchmaking. And now let's go to contemporary timepieces and let's talk AP. Like I mentioned in the intro, and with many other fellow journalists from all over the world, I was recently kindly invited by the brand to assist at their first semester new product presentation, and there were plenty, and stay reassured I won't cover them all. But this experience went beyond these pieces and fully plunged us in this pretty successful hypey AP spirit and mindset. For instance, we were able to stay in their new hotel, a first for me, and it was kind of a bizarre experience to be in such a modern and conceptual architectural envelope, meaning basically a lot of concrete, in the middle of this rather classical Vallée de Joux. But then we also got to have a glimpse at what will soon be their main working tool with the ongoing construction of what they call the campus, a huge building with Apple Cupertino HQ inspiration. Okay, not as big as this one, but in perspective of where it is, well, still quite big, and will ultimately house 1,500 employees, but will enable them to regroup many aspects of their manufacturing activity besides what we saw in Les Seignols, just on the periphery of Le Locle, and about an hour and a half drive from Le Brassus, and what a voyage this was. Beautiful sunny weather, snow on the fir trees, well, just postcard territory, and then you see this amazing new building inaugurated less than a year ago and now hosting what we knew as APRP, where all complicated watches are thought of, developed, manufactured and serviced, not only for AP but historically for many brands, though now it's of course mainly for AP. And what a fantastic building this is, and hopefully we'll soon be able to take you along for an extended visit of this place. Totally deserves it. Anyhow, let's talk watches, and we got to see some of their sweet new pieces, including their new super complication, the Code 1159 Universelle, also known as the RD4, and housing no less than 23 complications, including Grande and Petite Sonnerie, minute repeater of course, split seconds chronograph with deadbeat seconds, perpetual calendar, and it features an automatic tourbillon, and in total you have no less than 1,155 components making up this spectacular timepiece. But what is really important to point out is the philosophy behind this piece. Discussing it with Giulio Papi, the main idea was to develop a watch that not only looked kind of normal, if I can say so, but especially it's easy to use and set despite the impressive list of functions and complications. It's kind of idiot-proof and extremely ergonomic to use, and this is something which is now at the center of their development program. For instance, you use the chrono pusher to set some of the calendar information by simply turning them to desired function. You also use the upper pusher to set the sonnerie functions, grande, petite and silent mode. You activate the minute repeater with a button on the flank of the case at 9 o'clock. And all this is encased in a really wearable piece of only 42mm of width, and that's seriously quite something when you think of the complexity. So this piece comes in 4 variants, 2 rather low-key versions and 2 more technical skeletonized versions, and they are not limited, but of course limited by production capabilities, and the price matches the achievement being introduced for 1.6 million Swiss francs plus taxes. Yes, I know it's also limited by the number of people being able to purchase such a timepiece. Okay, next watch, and I must say that I totally fell for it. It's not entirely new, as it's a new production version of the RD2, their ultra-thin 2.9mm perpetual calendar automatic movement, introduced as a concept back in 2019 at the brand's last appearance at the SIHH. This one is called the Royal QP Ultra Thin, comes in a full titanium attire with a blue smoke dial, and it just sat beautifully and comfortably on my wrist. Really fully loved this one, and it will be limited to 200 pieces, and in another life I maybe would go for it. We then got to see some new Royal Oak variations, including a trilogy first reserved for the Japanese market, coming with some nice light blue tapisserie dial in 41mm white gold cases. And you have a frosted gold chronograph version, a simple three-hand version, the one I preferred, and a tourbillon version with gem set bezel. We also got to see quite a few new code 1159 models, for instance a Super Sonnerie version coming with an interesting translucent dial, and also a few new Royal Oak offshores, but since the program was quite intense, well, it was quite difficult to properly film them all. Anyhow, AP is for sure on a roll, announcing that they sold 50,000 pieces in 2022 for a turnover passing for the first time the 2 billion Swiss franc mark. And considering that almost all watches are now sold in their own boutiques and AP houses, something they will continue to expand, well, that's definitely quite remarkable and confirms the brand in the small club of the heavy players of the industry. And talking of the big guys, well, I quickly wanted to come back on the recent announcement made by Omega regarding the introduction of a new hairspring called the Spirate, and used for the very first time in a new model called the Speedmaster Super Racing. They claim that with this development it will significantly increase precision and limit variation between 0 and +2 seconds per day. And the main particularity of this silicone hairspring is that its last curve on the outside makes like a Z feature. And the fine-tuning is now made directly on the hairspring and not on its length, but on its rigidity. And this is, to our knowledge, a real first in our industry, and hopefully we'll also soon be able to visit them to get a better understanding of this development. Okay, next watch, and related to what I'm wearing today, this is the Hermes H08, a watch with a sporty feeling introduced back in 2021, which came in a titanium case. And at the time, I really believed it had its own very unique design distinctiveness, coming at a decent price and making it a really good everyday watch. Okay, I could have gone with a bit less Hermes flashy orange bracelet, but that's the way it is. Anyhow, Hermes have recently beefed up this collection with the introduction of a rose gold version and a black ceramic bezel. And I haven't seen it in the flesh, but the combination looks pretty fine to me. But with this, there's, of course, a little price hike. Okay, and now for some lesser known players, and the first on our radar will be a bright new bottle with the nice name Antigua. Yes, as in one of the two major islands that make up the Caribbean nation of Antigua and Barbuda. But the watch comes from a Belgian brand called Meraud, who has a special connection with the sea. The official launch of the Antigua was on the 7th of February, but we had this model a couple of days prior to the premiere to check out and test it in advance. And our first impression is pretty good. For one, this is a manual chronograph with a Swiss Landeron 248 caliber, which means the chrono starts with the upper pusher, and you need to use the lower pusher to stop and reset the seconds hands back. Bit tricky to perform if you're in active mode, because to press the lower pusher you need to change the position of your fingers, but it's cool to play with and also can be useful to measure your sport achievements, because Antigua bears the name of the most renowned classic race worldwide, the Antigua Classic Yacht Regatta in the Caribbean, and that's why it has such a bright, sporty, chic design. The second subdials at 9 o'clock is for sure inspired by the compass hands, and the second subdial at 3 o'clock can be used to time a moving start of a yachting race, for instance. The watch is of course waterproof to 100 meters and has a very comfortable size of 40mm at the bezel and 39mm at the case. It comes in a limited amount of 200 pieces at a very appealing price of €1,700. And I guess if you're looking for a solid nautical chronometer, well, this could be your choice. The only problem is that the expected delivery of pre-order timepieces is set for August-September. The following timepiece could be a nice addition to a Watch Geek collection, because inside this rather crazy bagel-like case, well, there is quite an interesting movement. The brand's name is Hook&Huygens, and this is its first timepiece. Well, some of you, of course, can recognize the names of the famous Dutch astronomer and mathematician Christian Huygens, and the name of the famous English watchmaker Robert Hooke. Huygens was the first person to work the mathematical formula for designing a consistent and accurate clock pendulum, while Hooke invented a new escapement that made the pendulum clock accurate enough to demand the addition of a minute hand, which then became common on clocks. Both are also known as creators of the balance spring we all can see in mechanical watches on our wrist today, and although it is likely Hooke who came up first with such an idea, anyways, despite the rich history of the two names, the brand represents a new and ambitious company from Neuchâtel here in Switzerland, run by a professional engineer, and their first timepiece is a great tribute to both scientists of the 17th century. The intricate mechanism consists of 8 manually wound barrels, which is hidden in the case frame, which makes us remember about the mechanical system of the mysterious clocks. So the movement is usually housed in the watch base, and the wheels are driven by pinions concealed inside the case frame using a transparent crystal as a dial. In this watch, however, we have the opening in the center with a patented annular semi-skeleton movement with 41 jewel bearings positioned in the bagel score of this 44mm diameter case. Yeah, the watch is quite big, and I find such complications quite audacious to put in the first timepiece of the brand, and it would be interesting to see what new inventions it will bring us next. So on the bonus side, it comes in a backgammon-like wooden box, and the beads in the center are interchangeable. You can use either simple steel beads, stones, precious stones, or even small figurines to define your own style and match your accessory with the outfit. So Hook&Huygens, like Lego, gives you endless opportunities to play around with your timepiece, but feels a bit strange to associate such illustrious names of watchmaking with Lego. Next in line is the new Grand Seiko timepiece named Urushi, a special edition to commemorate the 110th anniversary of the first wristwatch made by the brand. For this, Grand Seiko used its iconic model released in 1960 and recreated it using a special technique to decorate the dial to pay homage to local Japanese artisan and craftsmanship. So a bit of history here. The first ever wristwatch model made by Seiko was the Laura, a hand-wound timepiece with the movement originally designed for a small pocket watch with a frequency of 18,000 beats per hour. You can still find one of these in the Seiko Museum in Japan. It was a breakthrough for the brand, as at the beginning of the last century, most gentlemen were still wearing pocket watches. And that is why Urushi has a proper wristwatch in-house manual winding mechanical caliber 9S64 movement, which beats at the frequency of 28,800 beats per hour, with an accuracy of more or less 10 seconds per day. Last month, when Seiko launched 2 new timepieces to celebrate the 25th anniversary of this 9S caliber, and you can watch our quick review in our January Primetime edition. And if you want to know more about Seiko, well, I clearly invite you to check one of our Who's Who of Watchmaking video dedicated to them. Coming back to this watch, well, the case of the new watch is made of brilliant hard titanium. It's quite small and elegant, 38mm in diameter, 10.9mm thin, which makes it a nice dress watch. The small S on the crown is a tribute to the original Grand Seiko first watch, and the true masterpiece is the decoration of the dial using the traditional Kanazawa craft or Kaga Maki, which dates back to the 17th century. It is a painting technique that uses powder and thin plates of gold and silver to decorate lacquer boxes, or in this case, dials. Each lacquer dial is painted by hand, which means that you will never get 2 identical ones out of the 500 pieces available. Of course, some of you might say that the watch is a little bit pricey, but for such a unique piece of art, well, could still be a fair deal. From the decoration of the dials to the exceptional finishing of the movements by emerging European watchmakers, and you might have noticed that we like young and independents here. So this time I would like to present to you the new generation of talented watchmakers from Germany, the homeland of brands like Lange, Nomos, Glashütte, Morris Grossman and others. So Joseph Brezan and Lukas Pöhlmann are the 2 promising watchmakers behind the new name Junge Uhrmacher. And I think that you should start paying attention to their work, because the first timepiece they presented recently looks quite interesting. So both guys have been working at Wempe and Lange und Heine until they teamed up in 2019 to create their own hand-wound caliber, the GU26-01. And the sublime mechanism is now the heart of their first model, Prestige, presented to the public at the end of January. Despite its simple looks, it is a meticulously crafted timepiece with some hidden treasures inside. and Junge Uhrmacher, as proper magicians, have their own magic tricks. The modern case, made of stainless steel, is 40 mm in diameter and 12.2 mm in height, with lug-to-lug width of 48.8 mm. No heavy complications here, not even a separate sub-second dial, but throughout the sapphire crystal, you can see this caliber with the really nice polishing of each part and an unexpected cameo of a Breguet balance spring. Quite a nice trick considering this Breguet overcoil was invented at the end of the 18th century and was mostly used in pocket watches. Okay, some of you might say that the new caliber is in fact a heavily reworked lip R26 movement, which was used by many manufacturers in the past, but even Rafael Santi started his career by copying Leonardo da Vinci painting. So to summarize, Prestige has 39 hours of power reserve and is sold for 16.5 thousand Swiss francs. And there are two versions available in night blue and night gray, each limited to 24 pieces. Anyway, really good work, high quality finishing, and a great start. Looking forward to the new models also. Now to the watch from the brand with a long history, and it is Vulcain with their Skin Diver Nautique model. Simple and solid as almost everything produced by the manufacturer since the 19th century. And this watch is a combination of a utility model and quite a classical dress watch. We all know that the most complicated skill is to be simple, and Vulcain keeps it this way. So no major complication, accurate and quite small, 38 mm in diameter, so it fits small wrist. And this dark dial reminds us of the sea and its depth, and you shouldn't be afraid to dive deeper with the watch as it is water resistant to 200 meters. And the leather strap doesn't seem to be the obvious choice for a diver's watch, but as I told you, this timepiece could be a nice accessory for everyday use. The case is 12.2 mm thick and made of solid stainless steel, and inside there's an ETA 2824 automatic movement, which beats at 4 Hz. And has a power reserve of 38 hours. And for the price of 1,490 Swiss francs, well, this looks like a reasonable purchase. And those of you who follow the brand might have noticed the slight resemblance of this model to their Criquet ones from the 1960s, and it indeed took its inspiration from Vulcain's iconic timepieces that we will most definitely see back more and more in the near future, as the brand is finally getting the attention it deserves. And the last piece for today will be coming from the double winner of the GPHG last year, the most sought-after luxury brand in the world, Louis Vuitton, who presented another spectacular wristwatch to mark the 200th anniversary of its founder's birth. The new timepiece has an inbuilt automaton of a space shuttle moving to the chimes of a minute repeater to collect diamond stars. It is a visual and horological beauty, showcasing the highest level of watchmaking, and it took 2 years to develop this sophisticated mechanism, hidden in the titanium and white gold case. As the award-winning Carpe Diem, this Tambour Jacquemart minute repeater is a fruit of the successful collaboration of Anita Porchet with her sublime enameling skills and the engraving mastery of Dick Steinman. So the celebrated Geneva-based atelier La Fabrique du Temps, acquired by Louis Vuitton in 2011, was again in charge of the technical innards, and the hand-wound movement consists of 480 components, including 9 Jacquemart small figurines of the automaton with the Cathedral Gong minute repeater. It is the in-house caliber LV200 with the Côte de Genève finishing seen on the bridges, which beats at the rate of 21,600 beats per hour and has a power reserve of 100 hours. So for something as complicated, it's quite an impressive number. The case is big, 46.8 mm in diameter, 15.2 in height, so it won't feel comfortable on a small wrist. But this would be the least of your problem, as the watch is a pièce unique and is already sold. So for now, it is used only to display the fantastic capabilities of La Fabrique du Temps. So that's it for today, and I told you it would be a long one, but I am extremely happy that we have so many new watches to review and much more coming soon. Not to mention, big watch events like Watches and Wonder and Time to Watches here in Geneva in the end of March. And we will be covering all of them, so you're free to share in the comments the brands of your preference, and we will try to talk about them in the first place. So thanks so much for watching. An additional and special thanks to our patrons who help us make this possible and who are truly devoted to watchmaking and what we're doing here. So that feels pretty good. So the very best to all, see you very soon, and Viva Watchmaking! See you.